Hey everyone, my name is Josh Morgan. I own a media production company in Los Angeles, California. Thank you so much, Video Creator University, for having me on this session and a few more sessions as well. In today's video, we're going to be talking, or in today's session, I should say, we're going to be talking about budgeting for success, how to build a budget, how to manage a business with that budget. Are you charging too little? Are you charging enough? Are you charging too much? And then we're going to talk a little bit about forming a contract. And yeah, let's get into it. So I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. Okay. All right, budgeting for success. First slide. So starting out, you really have to understand how much your time is worth. And I know that's very vague because what does that mean? How much is your time really worth? So we're going to be covering that, don't worry. And along with time, you have to consider how much experience you have, how much experience you have out in the field doing this line of work. You have to take into effect how much education you have. Did you go to school for this? And of course, how much you invested into your business, for example, equipment. So all of those things are just some of the factors that you have to consider when forming a budget and presenting it either to your client or just if you're making a project for yourself or for your own business, you have to understand how much time and money it's going to take to produce this content. So let's get right into it. First, I want to start off with talking about the mistakes I have made. I have one particular story in mind that I want to share with you. And I'm a fitness guy, and I used to go to a family-owned gym. And every now and then I would bring out a little camcorder that I had and just film some of the fitness classes there because I was really good friends with a fitness instructor. And one lady approached me and she said, "Hey, do you film weddings?" And don't forget, I'm a complete amateur. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just bringing out the camcorder, filming it, and then just bringing it home and just putting random music and just random effects and just piecing footage together. And this lady approaches me and asks me if I film weddings. And out of anxiety, I just immediately said, "Yes, I film weddings." And then the next question came, the question that I dreaded the most. How much do you charge? In my mind, I basically had that monkey with the two symbols. I really didn't know what to say. So I just thought of a random number. How much do I charge for a wedding? How much do I charge for a wedding? $350. It was a random number I just pulled out of thin air. That number meant nothing. And it was just a random number. And I told her flat out, $350. She's like, "Okay, here's the address. I'll text you. Be here at this time. Do this, do that." I had no contract. I had no idea what I was doing. I was literally shaking. I was so nervous. I couldn't even tell her no. I had no idea how to film a wedding. I didn't even have the proper equipment. I just had a little camcorder. No lighting, no nothing. I just said yes. So that was my first mistake, saying yes out of impulse to projects that you're not sure or capable of doing. All right, you have to make sure that you can produce the content, produce the product. So that was my first mistake. And my next mistake was not understanding how much time it actually took to film a wedding. Sure, I've been to a wedding before, but you know, there's pre-production, you have to prep, you have to show up at the location early, you have to shoot out earlier, you have to shoot the ceremony, then you have to shoot the reception, and then you have to shoot post the reception, get all the speeches, have extra time to film not testimonials, but usually you would film what guests had to say about the wedding, any special messages to the bride and groom and so forth. So that all takes a lot of extra time aside from the actual wedding. And not to mention the post-production, which takes a lot. There's also the review process that the client has to go through, reviewing your edits, saying what's okay, what's not okay, and then the approval process. And then at the time when I did this project, you know, DVDs were a thing. Remember what DVDs were? I mean, I had to produce all the DVDs, and man, yeah, I just didn't understand how much time it actually took to shoot a wedding. So I see that we have something in the chat here. Let me take a look. And by the way, guys, throughout the whole entire session, you can ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. I'll do my best to answer that question if it's relevant at the time, and then, or if there's time during the session. And if not, we'll have a little bit of time at the end of the session to do a formal Q&A. And yeah, but I'll try to answer these questions as they pop up in the chat. All right, so we have someone from Chicago, someone from Florida. What's up, everybody? Cool. All right. Now, going on to my third mistake, and one of the biggest mistakes that I've ever made, and that was not having a contract, not having protection. That's like going to -30-degree weather with shorts and a tank top. You're gonna freeze. And that's literally what it felt like. So when you are dealing with clients, when you're dealing with other people, other brands, companies, a contract is an absolute key. It protects you, it protects your business, it protects your equipment, and it protects your content. All of those things really matter. So creating a contract is very important. So in today's session, I'm not going to teach you every little thing about making a contract, but I am going to teach you a very important clause in the contract where it's going to put the responsibility of the client to pay you some money up front and at the end when the project is finished. So stay tuned for that. But overall, I was very self-conscious at the time, at least. I still am a little bit about my work, but at the time when I first started out as an amateur, I was so self-conscious. Was my work good enough? I had no idea. I was literally getting random footage, putting it into my computer, editing it to random music with random flashy effects, not knowing what I was doing. It was nuts. I had no idea. And I said yes to a wedding. Why? Why did I say yes to a wedding? But I'm happy I did say yes because it taught me a lot about that. So my first official gig ever was a wedding. I can tell you about my experience, but I'll tell you right now, it was the most nerve-wracking experience of my life. I honestly don't know how wedding videographers do what they do. They must have some sort of a gift. Even the wedding photographers, it's an absolute gift. Because with a wedding, you have to remember that there are no do-overs. In Hollywood, they get do-overs. Okay, that shot was not good. Let's redo it with another take. You don't get other takes or second or third takes in weddings. So the pressure was on. And how old was I? I was like 18 or 19 years old. So I really didn't know what I was doing. I was so unprepared, and that made me feel extremely awful. And just like in the PowerPoint, just like in this slide, don't let this happen to you. Make sure you're prepared. All right. I've learned a lot through example. And in 2013, I met my first mentor. And having a mentor, especially a business mentor, is so powerful. And in 2013, this mentor, he had his own online business in the dating and life coaching industry. And this is a huge industry. So the person that I was working for, he was teaching men and women how to approach relationships, how they should be with one another, how to have successful relationships. And he was also a life coach, teaching them, consulting them. He was basically an online consultant and an in-person consultant. And surprisingly, he started off very similarly to how I started off. He told me a story about his first client and him not knowing what to do. And he looked at me eye to eye, and he told me, I'll never forget this. He said, never be scared to name your price. And I still have that in the back of my head. And this all ties in to budgeting and presenting this price to your client and being confident with this price. If you are truly good at what you do, the client will pay. So don't be scared of naming your price. And believe it or not, most people undervalue themselves and their work. You're probably doing it as well. I did it. I still do it sometimes to this day. Never undervalue yourself. And I'll teach you techniques on how to overcome this. And actually, it's right here. Ask your family and peers their opinion on how much your work could be worth. So for example, if I were to shoot a project and I was a beginner, I didn't know what I was doing, or maybe I just really loved what I was doing, producing great content, but just not knowing how to charge for it. I would take the video, the content, show it to my friends and family, and just kind of collect information. Hey, Remy, hey, John, hey, Daniel, how much would you pay for this type of video? Hey, mom, hey, dad, how much would you pay for this video? And when you start asking around, you kind of get a sense of a number popping into your head. Maybe my friend John would say, okay, I would pay $2,000 for this video. Remy, $1,000. My mom, $800. And then you start kind of getting a sense. There should be some sort of a trend of numbers. It shouldn't be that widely spread out, but I'm just saying, if you get a few people that name a similar price, then you're kind of onto something about how much your work is actually worth. Every person is different. Every person's work is different. So your numbers are going to be different than my numbers, and vice versa. So collect as much information about your work via your circle. So summarized, these are some of the most important things that my mentor has taught me back in 2013, all the way up and actually until 2016, 2017. Always be firm on your price if you know that's what it's worth, where your work is worth. Do not negotiate lower, as this can show weakness in your business and yourself, and give the opportunity for the client to, and yeah, excuse me, the weakness part will give the client the opportunity to take advantage. So you have to understand that negotiating isn't always in your favor. Clients usually like to take advantage over the price, and they like to negotiate lower. So if you give a price saying, I want $10,000 for this project, I've had clients offer me literally half that. Do not negotiate with that. They're not being serious if clients negotiate half your rate. So take that into consideration. And I personally experienced that, where I've gotten 50% reductions for my client in negotiations. It was just, it's a gut-wrenching feeling, guys, that a client just literally values your work in half. But the biggest thing you have to understand is you have to get as much experience as possible. Experience through life. School is excellent. And one of the best things that school has taught me was how to work in a team. But you have to learn how to deal with people out in the field in realistic environments. Because then when a client starts to negotiate your rate lower, you know exactly how to rebuttal. So these tips were taught to me by my mentor, and these tips were some things that he used in his business that made him a millionaire in under 1 year with his online business, multi-millionaire. So he knew how to present a budget to his client, and he knew how to budget for his own business on how to produce the content, showcase the content, market the content, and so on. Another good way to kind of ballpark what your work might be worth is to look at your competition. Now, this is not always the best way, but if you're a beginner and you really don't know what to do and how much to charge, look at your competition. How much are they charging? Your competition's either going to be better than you or worse than you. You have to understand that. So judge your own personal price, your own personal rates accordingly. All right. So you should know just by looking at other people's work if it's on par with what you're doing, above what you're doing, or below what you're doing. It's the harsh truth. You have to really rank what your work is truly worth. And by looking at your competitors, I mean, that's a good start of doing it. But later down the road, as you progress in your career, it's not always going to work like that. Think about the investments that you put into your business. How much did you spend in your lighting gear, your camera, your lenses, your microphone, and so forth? Also think about your living expenses. That all these numbers are thrown at you, and it's very difficult to kind of judge what your work is worth. So that's why I recommend putting everything in a spreadsheet and really isolating these numbers. And this is what's going to help you produce a rate. Something that I love to do is charge a day rate. I think this is an excellent way on just creating a budget for your business or for your client to hire you. I've worked, I live in Los Angeles, so it's very easy for me to have access to a lot of directors and writers, and I always talk to them. And they're hired as contractors. So they have day rates. So they always share with me, what the typical assistant camera day rate is, what a typical director of photography day rate is. Of course, it obviously depends on the production. If it's a short film, a feature film, if it's a big production studio. So all these factors take into account as well. But a day rate is usually what they go by, especially if it's a smaller project. So I like going with the day rates. I got hired a few times as a behind the scenes camera for some production shoots, and I charged them day rates, and that worked for me. And I was very happy with getting paid a day rate. Don't be scared about undervaluing yourself in the beginning, because it's going to happen. So you're going to charge lower in the beginning, and as you progress, you're going to start charging higher and higher and higher. And something that I really want to push to you is criticism, constructive criticism. When I started off, I hated being criticized. I couldn't stand it. And then after I started my business and I started, accepting my faults and accepting the things that I could have done better, I started absorbing people's feedback and implementing it into my work. And then as soon as my work improved, I was able to charge more. So always look at feedback. Feedback is your number one resource for how much your work is truly worth. So again, it goes back to your circle. Make some content, put it out there, let a lot of eyes see it. And people who you're close with, I want you to go and talk to them and just see what they say. How much would they pay for it? And you'll start seeing a little trend, a little pattern of numbers that keep popping up. All right. Day rate or project rate, which is better at the top? Okay, so let's talk about that really quick. A day rate, you get paid by the day, correct? A project rate, for example, a wedding. A wedding takes multiple days. The wedding itself takes one day, but then you have the pre-production, you have the post-production, and then you also, I don't know if a lot of people do this, but there's also the wedding rehearsal. So sometimes the wedding videographer will film the wedding rehearsal too. Wedding rehearsal, dinner, and all these other things. It depends how much the client wants to pay you. So in a sense where it's a multi-day shoot, yes, you're gonna offer a project rate. But if it's a shoot for one day, just a day rate. Now, I know that's very kind of, you want more explanation. Let's dive into it. So, for example, I was hired to shoot a tutorial video for a product, for a gimbal. Now, I'm going to come up with some random numbers. These aren't accurate at all. But let's say I charged $100 a day to film this tutorial series, a series of 5 or 6 videos for this product. I would honestly just make sure that I come up with a number that seems reasonable according to my day rate. So I knew exactly how much time it took for me to create this content. So 6 videos, I could usually film 6 videos in about 12 days. $100 a day, that's $1,200. Simple math, all right? And if you charge 500, then it's going to be 5 times that amount. So far, so good, I hope, right? So it's just simple math at that point. So you just plug in the day rate into the days, approximately how much it's going to take to create that content. Now, whenever you're making a contract with a client and you're giving them a price, it's always an approximate price. Things happen where things take longer, the approval process takes longer, and that's when you have to modify the price. That's why in your contract, it should always be an estimate. When you're a wedding videographer, it's an estimate. Sometimes they want more from you, and sometimes they want less from you. If they want less, you're not going to go below the original price that you listed. But if they want more from you, you're going to charge more. There are times when clients want the raw footage. Depending on you and your business, if you're okay with giving them the raw footage, they have to pay more for that. So that's why in the contract, it should state that it's an estimate. That's why whenever a contractor comes to your house, they give you an estimate first, because they kind of have an idea. They have a ballpark of how much it's going to cost to fix something, but it could end up costing more. So that's why it should be an estimate. So good question, Mike. Thank you. All right. Open to questions for everyone to comment. Awesome. Sorry, I meant to say, how hard is it to stay a contractor? How hard is it to stay a contractor? It's hard. It's hard because you're constantly relying on yourself. So people are probably going to be asking, oh, what's your motivation? It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. So you have to wake up, you have to make sure you have a schedule every day, and you're only going to be depending on yourself, which could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your work ethic. So I would say it's hard, but it's extremely rewarding because you're your own boss. And we have a question in the Q&A. Is there an example of a contract we can download? Yes. So I will show you a clause of a contract that's in my personal contract. And then I can, depending on how much time we have at the end of the session or at the end of this PowerPoint, I can tell you where you can download some sample contracts. So thanks, Mike, for the questions. Okay, on to the next slide. So there comes a time when you have some momentum in your business. You presented budgets to your clients. They're hiring you. When do you increase your prices? Luckily, I live in a family full of entrepreneurs. My mom's a therapist. My brother is a public speaker, and they're basically contractors. So we're all thinking about supply and demand. There's only one of us. So now we have to focus on the demand. How much demand is there for our services? I'll tell you right now, this year has been the busiest year of my life, and I needed things to slow down a little bit. If you ever feel overwhelmed with how much business you're getting, I mean, it's a great thing. It's excellent. You probably feel pumped about it, but it's just not manageable. You only have two options at this point. One is to increase your prices, or two, hire staff. So you got to decide, or you can do both. But usually when you get a lot of demand and you're okay with working by yourself, you got to up your prices. I would say anywhere from 15% to 20% increase. And that's the minimum. That's the minimum. It all depends on the amount of demand you're getting. So I've been doing a lot of branded deals and a lot of client projects as well. And as soon as it started feeling overwhelming, I upped the prices. I'm going to up my prices again in January. Now, you don't want to do it too frequently throughout the year, maybe once or twice in a year, and then wait for the following year, because it's just not good to have past clients pay your higher rate so soon. It doesn't work that way that well, at least not for my business or for my mother's business. So it's good to just wait a couple months, wait until the following year to up those rates, unless the demand is just so extremely high you can't even breathe. And it does get that busy, believe it or not. And then once you increase those rates, again, examine your work, get some more information. Is your work really worth that amount? And again, you're going to see this through the demand, but it's always good to just constantly check yourself. Don't get too cocky with your work. All right. Don't get so egotistical, because it's happened to me. My ego has gotten so high, and it's good to just check yourself every now and then. And yeah, that's the demand, and that's how you should kind of aim with increasing your rates. And we talked about earlier when Mike, I believe, asked about creating a package deal, how much you should charge. Again, it's a combination of rates, usually from the day rate. I go off of day rates. I think I'm the most happy with that, and it's extremely simple, especially when building a budget and sending that budget over to your client. Thinking about the amount of time it's going to take to create your content, that is the tricky bit. And you're only going to know how much time it takes to create this content through experience. There's just no other way to judge how much time it's actually going to take. Because I've been doing this for so many years, I know that for a tutorial video or for a branded video, it's going to take me about 2 days to shoot and edit. And that's if I don't have any other work to do with any other brand. So if I'm truly just focused on one brand, 2 days to produce one video. Is it 2 full days, 2 half days? You have to consider that as well. Don't forget, a full day is 8 hours, half day, 4 hours, or less than 8 hours. So consider that. And again, you may need to hire staff if you're too overwhelmed. And if you really do increase your rates and you still feel overwhelmed, it might be time to hire some staff, like a personal assistant, an editor, depending on the business that you're in. Ideally, you want a budget that will cover your time, experience, investments that you've made into your business and into your equipment. This is what the budget covers. Time and experience is the most important. Time is everything. Time is our most valuable asset, so you have to be compensated for that. All right? And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you need to also think about your equipment. Now, something that I used to do earlier on was charge a percentage of the equipment. For example, if I'm shooting a car commercial, which lights and cameras am I going to bring? How much do they cost? And I'll take a fraction of that and plug that into the budget. That's one way of doing it, and it's worked. It's worked for me and it's worked for my client. And overall, I've been pretty happy with it. Another way you can plug in your equipment into your projects is by looking at local rental houses and see how much they charge for renting that equipment. You can go off of those rates as well and plug that into your budget, plug that into your spreadsheet, and that will overall be much better for you. Don't forget that every creator, no matter if they're in the same field as you, if they're making projects or content in the same topic as you, their work is going to be different than your work. So your rates should never be exactly the same as another person's rates. It should always be a range, slightly higher, slightly lower, slightly on the same level. Think about those things. And again, think about the demand. Video content is very high in demand, especially since we're spending a lot more time at home. We want to be consuming more digital content. People want people like you to create digital content. Video content is absolute killer right now. And if you're a photographer, same thing. Everybody wants a photographer. Everybody wants a person that knows how to work a camera. It's very high in demand. No matter where you are, even if you're in in some island in the middle of the ocean, hopefully you have internet, but it doesn't matter. If you produce good work, somebody's going to want to hire you, and you're probably just going to end up doing work over the internet, just like how I'm doing. A lot of the brands that I work with I collaborate with them over the internet. I create a lot of the content for them at home. I send it to them for their approval, and then I post it, or they use that content for their own channels. So you don't really need a client to be face-to-face with you. All right, so consider that. And now the fun part. Let's talk some numbers. The contract. So my first client was that wedding client. Remember, we talked about her in the beginning of the video, in the beginning of the session, excuse me. And I instantly just said $350, right? No contract, no nothing. And it was such a bad experience. Overall, she was happy with the video, but it was more like a highlight reel of the wedding. It wasn't a complete video. Usually wedding videos could be like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I gave her a 3-minute highlight reel. She was like, "Oh, that's great. But where's the rest of it?" What do you mean, where's the rest of it? I thought that's what you wanted. This is why a contract is so important, because it tells the client exactly what you are going to deliver them. I just did a 3-minute highlight reel, and she was like, "What? Where's the actual video?" So because of that, she delayed paying me. Like, I waited probably 8 months to get paid $350. And that's where the contract also can save you. It will make your client pay you on time. Okay, so let's get into that. So in this session, we're mainly going to be focusing on getting paid, because that's very important. A contract has a bunch of other clauses when it comes down to insurance, when it comes down to dates and times and all of that stuff, and whether or not you're going to be renting more equipment or having staff with you, or, contracts can be pretty intense and very dense at times. So we don't have enough time in today's session to go over the whole contract, but we'll just talk about getting paid, because at the end of the day, that's what matters when you're running a business. Half now, half later. There's a reason why this term or this phrase is so important. It's because it works. So before your project begins, before you pick up your camera and start recording, you should make it very clear in your contract there should be a 50% down payment or deposit before production begins. This is a non-refundable deposit unless you cannot perform your services. So if the client pays you 50%, locks you down in the schedule, and then a week later says, oh, wedding was canceled, event was canceled, sorry, we can't hire you, can I have my money back? No, they cannot have their money back, because you booked them for that day, they didn't follow through. So in turn, they actually wasted your time, and you could have had work with another person on that day instead. So this is why the 50% deposit protects you from losing money, and it also puts the client's skin in the game. Sometimes a client will say, oh, I'll pay you when the project is done. No, the client can flake and never pay you. You don't want that to happen. With the client paying you 50% down, that's their promise that they're going to follow through. And on top of that, it's going to keep you on your toes and make sure that you perform your job too, because you want to get paid the other half. So it's a win-win for the client. It's a win-win for you. And 50% down payments, very important. Mike says, a contract with no clear payment terms is a contract that doesn't legally need to be paid at any time other than a reasonable one. Mike, you said it, man. You said it right on the dot. Yeah, payment terms are key, which is why the half now, half later always works. So along with half now, half later, you have to make sure that dates are shown on the contract. The client has to give you dates. The client has to give the client has to promise you what they can offer you. For example, if you're shooting a wedding, you have to make it clear in the contract that the client will have somebody guiding, like whether it's the wedding planner or the wedding planner's assistant, they're going to be showing you around, showing you what to capture. In the contract, if you want it to make it the client's responsibility to capture specific footage, you can. Because there have been times I've heard horror stories of other wedding videographers where they shot a beautiful video, but the client wasn't happy because they didn't capture a specific rose that was set on the table, or if there was a light fixture that they didn't capture. It could be any finite detail like that. So remember that. It should be very clear in your contract that if the client wants something specifically shot, it should be in that contract. Because at the end of the day, they'll end up blaming you. And you don't want that you don't want that on you. You don't want that on you. So the contract is what takes care of everything, takes care of the pressure that's on your shoulders, and it makes life so much easier. Due dates. The due date is good for you, and it's good for your client, because it gives them a time to be like, okay, it's time for me to pay up if I like the project, and it gives you a deadline so you make sure you get the work done. So due dates are very important in the contract. And don't forget, you are not supposed to do an ounce of work until you get the 50% deposit from the client. Very important. All right, do we have another question? How many edits should be included in a contract? At what time is the project officially done and sealed with any extra work needing a new payment? Thank you for the question, Mike. So in my contract, it's 2 edits. 2 edits. So if the client was like, okay, I want to change this, you submit those edits, you redo those edits, and the client says, oh, shoot, I forgot this. Can you redo this? That's 2. It's usually, from my experience, 2 is, it's perfect. So 2 is very important. Any more than that, you got to start charging more. And again, start charging your day rates at that point. At what time is the project officially done and sealed with any extra work needing a new payment? It's officially done when the client says they're happy, the project is done. Of course, if they used up those 2 edits, they have the option to hire you for more time to re-edit specific parts of the video. But that's up to you. That's up to you. But there have been a lot of clients that couldn't make up their minds, leading to 10 edits, 12 edits, but you got to make sure you're going to be charging for that because time is money. While you're working with them, you miss an opportunity to work with somebody else. So make sure you get compensated for that. So here's an example of the payment clause in my contract. My contract is approximately 2 pages, a lot of legalities that are in there. And this is just one little part about the payment clause. Client obligation, the client agrees to pay for the amount of blank, 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 how much the project is worth or how much it costs, and payable to Joshua Morgan, Momentum Productions, and due when the project is completed and reviewed before being published. That's very important. So if you're a social media creator and you're working with a brand and they want you to post content on your channel, you need to make sure that you're paid before it's published. So 50% deposit is due before production begins, and the final payment is due once the video is completed and reviewed by the client. Now, this depends on the client and the brand that you're working with. Some clients or brands don't require a review, some do. All right, so this is something that you have to work out with the client. And if you're working for a client that's not a brand and just for content like a wedding or a party or something like that, then that's different as well. That has nothing to do with your social media or your platform. All right. But you do have to make sure that you get paid that 50% deposit and that once they say they're happy and there's no more re-edits, that the payment is due. Okay. And I'm going to be showing you an example of an invoice that I send out to clients. Having an invoice is very important too. It's something that you got to show to your client. It's something that you got to keep for your tax records, and so forth. So yeah, just as I mentioned before, there are a lot more legal terms that go into a contract. It's too long for this session. So just make sure you get paid. Make sure you get paid. Don't get taken advantage of, because that's just something that happens in business and you got to protect yourself. So here's an example of a standard invoice I send out to clients. All right, these numbers are not real, obviously, because it says example project, client's name. I have my logo at the top left corner so they know it's from me. All right, it's a very simple invoice. Invoice right here, invoice number right here. You've got to label every single invoice. You've got to make sure they're put in folders, because when you do your taxes, when you need to, provide records of something, everything has to be properly labeled. So make sure that your invoices are numbered numerically, and that way you'll be able to easily find them when you need them. Okay. Bill to client's name. Obviously, you need to have both addresses. So my address will go up here under Momentum Productions. Bill to client's name and their address, the date of the invoice, not the date of when the project started, but the date of the invoice. The balance due. So this could be either the 50% or the final 50%. And then we have a quick explanation here of what was done. So for example, the example project or the wedding or the tutorial video, that will go right here. Quantity, that's really irrelevant for this type of content, so don't worry about that. Rate, your rate goes there. Final amount, subtotal, taxes. So depending on which country you're in, honestly, eventually I will start incorporating taxes into my rates, because that's becoming a very big deal now. So make sure that, no costs go on to you. All the costs are supposed to go on to the client. That's how business works. You offer a service, the client pays for that service and everything that it takes to create that service. So remember that. That's really important. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and answer. Can't see the invoice. Does anyone else not see the invoice? Please let me know, because it's a part of the PowerPoint, so you should be able to see the invoice. Please let me know in the comments or in the chat. Okay, perfect. So see it. So hopefully right now you can see it. I don't know if you guys see the little chat window that popped up here, but I'm looking at the chat. But yeah, this is just the standard invoice. If you can screenshot it, I highly advise that you screenshot it. Now, if you also need to advise, right here in this section, I usually have like a little notes section where I tell the clients how they can pay. They can pay through Venmo, Zelle, bank transfer. So you need to provide all of that information right here, list of options and where they send the money to. It could be check or cash or so forth. So don't forget that right here in this blank space, you will have the option to put all those notes down there for your client to read and to send payment. Yes, please use the Q&A section to submit questions. Thank you. Is there a deadline to agree in case something comes up and the project is delayed? Yes, there's usually a deadline. I don't shoot a lot of weddings, so I know I brought up weddings a lot in this, but it was just something that's very simple to understand because everybody knows what a wedding is. But for a lot of other projects, yes, I do provide a deadline. You can also state in a clause in your contract that the deadline can be changed. It can be changed depending on the circumstances. So for example, if a client wants to re-edit, obviously the deadline will be changed. So yes, you can make it official. You can make it a deadline where there's no delays. Or what I recommend is that you leave a little bit of leeway by stating that in the clause in your contract. The deadline can be changed if there is a reason to do so. There has to be a legitimate reason to do so. Okay. All right, let me see what's in the Q&A here. Mike says, thanks for the great presentation. Will there be a place to download the PDF too? I'm not sure if there will be a place to download the PDF. I think you mean the slideshow or the Google Slides. I don't know how that works, but I can definitely send it over if they allow PDF downloads, but I'm not sure how that works. That's a question for our awesome moderators. So go ahead and ask them that. But yeah, I have no problem with sharing that information. We have about 5 minutes left. I know that we end at 3:20, so we'll leave this open to a live Q&A. And I also want to tell you guys a quick story. So the mentor that I worked with, a dating and life expert or life coach, one of the things when he told me, never be scared of naming your first price, right? That was one of the first things that he told me. And he told me that when he first got into this consulting business, he charged a client, I think he said $5,000 for a 1 hour coaching session in person, $5,000. And he came up with that number randomly, and he didn't expect to get paid. He didn't expect the client to take him seriously, and the client just agreed and paid him the $5,000. So you never know, guys. I'm not saying you should just bring out random numbers, from thin air. That's usually never the right way to do things. But he said that price with such confidence to the client, like he knew exactly what he was doing. And that was one of the leading factors to why that client took him seriously. And that client thought that he knew what he was doing and paid him on the spot. No hesitation. $5,000. Okay, here you go. $5,000. Paid him up front. No half and half. Paid him up front. So when you're dealing with a client and you get to meet them face to face or on Zoom or on video chat or whatever, confidence is key. I know we're not supposed to, that's not really what the session is about, but you have to be very confident. When you're an entrepreneur, you're a business person. So you really have to learn how to talk to people. And this is what's going to help increase the value of your work and your business. All right. Manny is asking, when you're first starting off, how do you budget for insurance? Do I need insurance when booking my first few clients? Yes, you do need insurance. I can't really talk too much about this because California insurance is different than, Arizona or Colorado insurance. So I can't talk too much about budgeting for that. But I would say a good 10%, something like that for the insurance. 10% is usually good to cover the insurance bill. If someone breaks your equipment, you need to be covered. If you trip over somebody's leg and you hurt them, you need to be covered. So insurance is very important. You don't want any of that coming down on your shoulders. So please be protected with a contract, with insurance, and all that good stuff. Also an LLC, all right? I'm not a certified accountant or anything, but having an LLC is important. All right, awesome, everyone. I think that's about it. Do we have one more Q&A question here? I think that's about it. Yeah, everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this live stream, to this session. I want to give another shout out to Future Media Conferences and Apple sponsoring this. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you in another session later on this week. Okay, here we have one more question really quick. Is there a deadline to agree with the client just in case? Oh no, we already answered that. Okay, cool. All right, it just popped up randomly. Okay, cool. Thank you all so much. Hopefully I'll see you in another session. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of this awesome conference, and I will see you later.
Thank you again for joining us, and please feel free to submit any other questions you may have and rate this session after the session ends. Josh, I will stick around for a little longer if there are any more questions.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do the same as well. All right. Awesome, cool. Yeah, any last minute questions? I'll try to answer them as best as I can. All right. So my screen's off to the side. So if I'm looking down, I'm just looking at the chat here. Cool. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you. Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Film Arts, to everyone. Thanks for the great comments, everybody. I hope that this was enlightening. Overall, this session was meant to help protect you guys in the business because at the end of the day, it is a business. So you have to make sure you prolong it, and having a contract and having the proper budget, coming up with the right numbers is very important. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening. And I really do hope that you learned something. And yeah, I have a lot more horror stories that I could share because there are a lot more mistakes that I've made in my business earlier on. But we're unfortunately out of time. But hopefully in another session, I can disclose that information and prevent the mistakes that I made, just so you save time. Again, time is your most valuable asset. It's something we can never get back. So always think about the amount of time it takes to do something. Ben says, use accounting software like Xero to track invoices and tax is one of the biggest quality of life improvements I've done. All right, yeah, Xero is good. I personally have an accountant that has to deal with all of that mess. Honestly, I hate dealing with taxes, but so I have an accountant who deals with all that because it can get very messy, especially if you run your own business. So yeah, you can use software, you can use an accountant, anything that will make your life easier so you focus more on the actual work and less about, taxes and all the documentation and all that stuff. Let's see if there's any more questions here. And Mike, just like you said, a contract with no clear payment terms is a contract that doesn't legally need to be paid at any time other than a reasonable one. Yeah. Emails don't count as contracts, everybody. Signatures need to be made. Signatures. So emails are okay proof, but contracts, that's what you want. Contracts are what you want. I can share one more story with you on another mistake that I've made. So I was working a lot in the fitness industry, dealing with a lot of fitness clients. I was a contractor filming content for their YouTube channels. And I've been working with this one client, and we were friends. We became friends. This was, when I was still kind of an amateur, and with that client, I grew, my work grew, and I became better. And I treated him as a friend, and we treated each other as friends. And then we came up with a new business model, and we kind of restructured what we were doing together. So at the end, I saw him as like a business partner and a client at the same time. No contracts were involved, And literally 6 months later, he just stopped responding to my calls, my emails. He owed me probably like 2 or 3 grand, which to me at the time was a lot of money. It is a lot of money. So 2 or 3 grand, and he never paid me. I had no contract. So it doesn't matter how long you've known the person. If you're dealing with business and money is involved, you have to have a contract. You really do have to have a contract. And it's just something that I keep stressing, and it hurts to see people get run over by their clients like that. It's really not cool. I've been run over so many times, and right now it's like I'm all, I'm prepared for this now. So having a contract is just crucial to having a sustainable business. And please let me know in the chat what kind of work you are doing, what kind of digital content you are creating. If you are creating digital content, let me know. It's just very curious to see what people are working on. And yes, this recording will be available for 180 days to the VIPs. So that's cool. You can watch this content over and over again, get it drilled into your head that you need a contract, because that's very important. Thanks. Anything that avoids weddings. Yeah. Weddings, weddings are beautiful, but it's just, for me, it's extremely stressful to work at a wedding. It's just, I have horror stories. I've had another instance where I've shot on Red Gemini cameras. Those are very expensive cameras. And there was a crew of me and 2 other people, and my camera froze during the ceremony. And I've never been so nervous before in my life, because the camera literally just froze. Literally, as they were saying "I do," and the camera just froze on me. So I just never had good luck with weddings. Never had good luck with weddings. So I'm not doing that for my business anymore. But there's a lot of successful wedding videographers. I met one last week. She was awesome, and people love it. It's not meant for everybody. It's definitely not meant for me. But yeah, just make sure you're prepared. Make sure you can do the job. That's important. I didn't make sure of anything in the beginning. A wedding, sure, I'll do it. I didn't realize how stressful it was. I'm kind of happy that I said I'll do it, but I wasn't happy during the wedding, because it was just so stressful. So stressful. I aged probably 10 years during that wedding. Oh man. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in today's session. Thank you, Josh Morgan, for
Of course,
budgeting
thank you.
for success.